Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Ali Salman on behalf of Islam and Liberty Network. I welcome you all to our sixth webinar this month. Many of you have attended these webinars before. I welcome you, and also those who are attending for the first time. I welcome you and look forward to an engaging discussion. Due to the fact that our guest speaker right now is based in Afghanistan and the internet speed is not so high there, we have turned off our respective videos, and we'll be carrying on in the audio mode only. We will have, as usual, first a presentation or a talk by a speaker, Abul Ahrar Ramizpoor, which will be then followed by question and answers. Let me introduce our speaker today. Can I have a quick voice check? If you can, any of you can type in the chat box to confirm you can hear me fine. Thank you so much. The speaker for sixth webinar, Mr. Abul Ahrar Ramizpoor, is a well-known Afghan libertarian, peace and human rights activist. He is currently the human rights officer at the United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan and a member of the Pugwash Council. He is a former lecturer at Sharia faculty of Kabul University and the founder of the Afghanistan Economic and Legal Studies Organization. Ramizpoor pursued his postgraduate studies on good governance and Sharia in Birmingham University, UK in 2005, and on international human rights law at Nottingham University in 2010. The topic is, as you all know, is Sharia compatible with free society? We requested Ramizpoor to speak on this topic because of his background and expertise. When he wrote forward for this book called Islamic Foundations of a Free Society, which was published by IEA, comprising many of the papers which were presented in Islam and Liberty, formerly known Istanbul Network conferences. He wrote that the legal and juridical principles of Islamic law recognize individual freedom and rights, along with the responsibilities of individuals in a society, that provided an appropriate context for an independent judiciary and the defense of individual rights through the courts. And he wrote that Islam insists on freedom of movement and in principle does not recognize boundaries between Islamic societies. And Islam shared these characteristics with other progressive legal systems and religions in the world, and it has also promoted business and trade with all non-Muslims, essentially saying that Islam and Sharia has always historically seemed compatible with a free society. Obviously, this is not matched by the common perception today, but we will hear more from him, and then we will have contributions from the participants. I'm now handing over the microphone to our guest, Mr. Ramizpoor, turning off my audio. Over to you, Ramizpoor, now.
By the name of God, good afternoon, everybody. For those they are in our time zone, and I'm sure some colleagues they are living in other time zone, good evening for them. This is a great honor for me that on behalf of Istanbul Network for Liberty, as one of the founders of the Istanbul Network for Liberty, and also on behalf of Afghanistan Economic and Legal Studies Organization, the winner of South Asia Liberty Forum Prize 2018. And also based on my experiences, as you mentioned, as a lecturer at Kabul University Sharia faculty, today I am here, and I would like to raise some points regarding compatibility of Sharia with free society. At the beginning of my points, I would like to draw your attention for definition of free society, and similarly to the definition of Sharia. And then we will seek to find out any comparative analysis between the elements of free society according to our definitions, and also within in Sharia. As we know all, based on our studies and facts and books and mainly our studies, that the great philosophy of French Henri Bergson, and also Australian scholar Karl Popper, both of them somehow defined civil society as a society where the government should be very transparent, and every individual should has the right to express herself or himself in society, and the mechanism of reaching to power in such society should not be based on violence and dictatorship, but it should be based on willingness of people and consent of everybody. And free society is somehow opposing to the closed society. When we know the closed society, indeed, we can identify what should be a free society. In a free society, there should be circles out of the influence of the government, like the circles of civil society, media, free speech, freedom of expression, free trade, free businesses, and also opportunity for individuals to express their belief, their opinion, without any pressure, without any influence by the government. Then we have to look on the definition of Sharia, what Sharia means. Sharia is a component of orders, provisions, and also prohibitions, which somehow issued by God or by his prophet, peace be upon him, according to Islamic Sharia. If you look deeply to the definition of Sharia and the concept of Sharia, it has two pillars. One pillar, which we call that foundation of Sharia, which in Arabic we call that al-ahkam al-usuliyya or al-ahkam al-asliyya. That is the theologic part of the Sharia, like belief on God, on angels, on holy books, on the day after this world. All these things a Muslim should believe on that. We are not going to talk on the theological part of Sharia. The second part, the second pillar of Sharia, is practical part of Islamic Sharia, which is known by Islamic jurisprudence, or in Arabic we call that fiqh. Beside of fiqh as a knowledge, as a practical knowledge or a legal knowledge of Islamic Sharia, which is very important for us to understand a little bit on it, since it has close supportive rule for market economy, for free society concept. There are also two other subjects supporting Islamic jurisprudence. One is Islamic jurisprudence principles, and the second is the knowledge of foundation of Islamic jurisprudence, which in Arabic we call that ilm al-usul, usul al-fiqh. In the first is qawaid al-kuliyya al-fiqhiyya. These two subjects also are very important, significantly, and very supportive for better understanding of Islamic Sharia. there is no doubt that Islamic jurisprudence plays a very significant role in all Islamic societies, Islamic countries, in their national legislations, starting from constitution, civil code, criminal code, in other complementary national legislations for each of the Islamic countries. Afghanistan is a good example of that. Later on, I will come on that. The knowledge of Islamic Sharia somehow based on some specific issues that somehow make it unique comparatively to other knowledges or to other religious knowledges. This knowledge or Sharia knowledge somehow based on four main resources. The four main resources that somehow get the agreement of all main Islamic school of thoughts. In these four sources are Quran, the holy book of Muslim, in Sunnah, the acts of Prophet of Islam, peace be upon him, he did or other people did front of him, he recognized those actions of people or rejected those actions. What he said, what other people did front of him, or what he did and other people saw that and then reported generation to generation up to date. And the third resource is consensus, which we call in Arabic ijma, agreement of Islamic scholars in a particular time on a certain issue. In the fourth resource is qiyas or logic. Logic is very important because all Islamic school of thoughts somehow has this source. And there are also some other sources which agreed between one or two school of thoughts, not generally accepted by the all four Sunni sects in others. We call these sources like istishab al-hal, comparing some actions done in the past to the current similar action by transforming the provisions of the past incident to the current. And another source is istihsan, which is very important in Sunni school, particularly in terms of businesses and trade, since it mainly based on tradition and customary. And also the source, which is this source rely on that, that's the logic and that's the reason of humankind. And the third is al-masalihul mursala, the good things somehow identified by Islamic jurists, and we should follow those good things. And also saddu zara'i in some other sources, which is not so popular or so agreed by other scholars. However, the jurisprudence knowledge of Islamic Sharia covers all parts of human life in Islamic society. When a person in Islamic society wake up in the morning from sleeping up to his going back to bed at the midnight, any single act he or she doing during the day or night, it's not out of one of Islamic provisions. And that's why Islamic jurisprudence somehow covers all the actions of humankind in Islamic society. Islamic jurisprudence somehow covers four main parts or four main subjects. Praying of humankind in Islamic society is the main chapter in Islamic jurisprudence, which we are not going to talk on that. The second part is covering the personal status of a person in Islamic society, which we call that al-ahwal al-shakhsiyya, like marriage, divorce, inheritance, etc. In the third part, which is very important according to our aim or our promotion values, is the mu'amilat. The mu'amilat means dealing or different types of contract or deals which in Muslim society or Islamic society doing by Muslims, with Muslims or with non-Muslims. In the fourth part of Islamic jurisprudence covers punishments and crimes. Now we have to look, where is the position or the stage of free society values in Islamic Sharia. We identified the main elements of free society, like individualism, freedom of expression, freedom of belief, freedom of economic activities, pluralism, diversity, rule of law. Let's see, do we have this kind similar values or similar foundations or provisions in Islamic Sharia or not? One is the practical approach. When we review the Islam history, we see, as I mentioned in the beginning of the Free Society Foundation in Islam book, that the golden time of Islam, particularly in 7th century, 8th century, 9th, even 10th century, show that the good relation of Muslim communities with non-Muslim, trade between Muslim and non-Muslim communities, freedom of speech, different circles of knowledge or studying among Muslim communities, particularly Baghdad was the big center of exchange of education and the interpretation of knowledge from Western societies to Islam to Islamic society. That is a historical point, but based on the what we have in Sharia sources like Quran and Hadith and Ijma and Qiyas, in other sources of Islamic jurisprudence, do we have some credible arguments, some credible foundations for a free society or not? We have to look to the historical points and to the sources once again. First of all, we have to start from individualism. Individualism, which is very important in a free society, and every individual should have the right to express her or him in a society. In Islam, it exists, and it mentioned in the Holy Quran, and despite that Muslim community calling in Islam, in Quran, in Sunnah as a community, as Ummatul Islamiyya. But at the end of the time, in the next world, the punishment and accountability are with individuals, not with collective community. Everybody should report on what he did in this world, in what he did for the benefit of the society. There are verses of Quran which shows that at the end of the time, in another world, a Muslim which believe on restoration of their life and giving her or his account in front of God, the verses of Quran says, even in a very single issue, in a very minor issue of what a Muslim committed in this world will be counted, and he or she will be punished or will be receive prize on that. That is important. And also there are verses in Quran that says that everybody is independently should act and will not somehow condemn or should not be taken instead of an individual who committed some crime or something, which we are calling that individuality of punishment in crimes, which has a very strong foundation in Islamic jurisprudence. It's somehow transferred right now in all Islamic societies' national legislation. The presumption of innocent, which is also another principle of Islamic law, it exists also in national legislations, and also it somehow affected on international treaties, which we have in Civil Political Rights Convention, in other convention of human rights. If you go to the place and a stage of reason or rationalism in Islam, which is very important in a free society, beside of that Islam is somehow based on Quran, on divine, in the Prophet actions, in Prophet speech, proving other people did something in front of Prophet and Prophet recognized or rejected that. But beside that, the reason has a very highest stage in Islamic Sharia, particularly in Hanafi school, which is known by the school of Raya. Is one of the main schools of the Sunni schools, which based on Raya. Raya mean reason or vision or view of people. Abu Hanifa, the founder of one of the very important Sunni school of thought, Hanafi school of thought, he somehow emphasized on the rule of reason, on extracting the orders and provisions from the main source of Islam, like Quran, and also based on the tradition and customary. He was comparing the customary and tradition according to the ongoing situation of the society, and he was adopting many orders and provisions in his jurisprudence particular school. In this regard, as I mentioned before, the principles of jurisprudence is very clear. It says everything ordered by jurisprudence, by Sharia, the same thing could be ordered also by reason, by human reason. In everything ordered by reason, by human reason, it is similarly could be ordered also by Sharia. It shows a kind of equality between reason and between Sharia as a source, as a main source of Sharia. As one of the sources I mentioned before in Islamic schools was istihsan. Istihsan is totally based on tradition and who has the right to identify the best istihsan. He is an Islamic jurist, and he is doing this operation based on his reason, based on his mind and logic. The third issue, which is very important in a civil society, is the evolve of law by the time and by the place. As we know, the legislations, constitutions, regulations should be developed by the time and should be comparatively get some progress due to the moving of time and due to the moving or due to the change of the place. In Islamic jurisprudence principles, there is a very clear principle that says لا ينكر تغيير الأحكام بتغيير الزمان والمكان. It means it is not avoidable to change the provisions due to the change of time and due to the change of place. It means that the law and regulations and legislations, all of them are changeable due to the change of time, due to the change of place. For instance, Abu Hanifa, one of the main founder of Sunni schools, he established his school of thought in Iraq, in Kufa. Why he established his school there, and why he somehow focused too much on Raya, on his own view, without considering too much on Hadith. The reason was that Iraq in that time was a big center of trade and exchange with other nations, Muslim and non-Muslim, particularly Khorasan, India, and in the north part, like Azerbaijan and others located in that region. Abu Hanifa, since he was a businessman, since he had trade relation with other communities, with other people, he studied the tradition of that society. He tried to use his reason, his mind, instead of focusing or relying too much on Hadith. And he could develop the provisions based on the place he lived on that and based on the time he stayed in that specific period. In opposite of this, Imam Malik bin Anas, who is known as the founder of Maktab or School of Hadith, he was born in Medina, the center of Hadith, the center of Prophet of Islam, peace be upon him, companions. The center of Hadith was Medina, since many people immigrated from Mecca to Medina. In their were discussion on Hadith, what Prophet said, what Prophet did. Malik based his school of thought on Hadith, since it was very accessible for him to reach people, to reach individual, and get Hadith and rely on that, and also make his school of thought based on Hadith. But Abu Hanifa, since he was too far from Medina, he established his school of thought based on Rai, based on reason, and he succeeded on that. In this case, Hanafi school of thought, and also most of the Sunni school of thought, they believe that the time, the change of time, the change of place, in Arabic they are saying bi'ah, or environment, it affects on to develop the laws and regulations time to time. In a free society, we should not stuck with one law, with one regulation all the time, since the Sharia has this authorization to Islamic jurists and to the legal institutions to adopt new laws which should be fit for the society, for the individual's rights. Another point which is important in civil and free society is freedom of expression and freedom of belief. According to very obvious verses of Quran, no one should be forced to accept Islam. Binding to Islam should be in will of a person and also in consent of person. No one should force someone to make him Muslim, or make him to go out of Islam or to go out of any religion. Also, in terms of freedom of expression, it's very clearly mentioned in Prophet Hadith. He says, "Tell the truth. Tell the truth. If it can also, if it is also so hard." Since it's Arabic, I'm very sorry for that translation. قُلِ الْحَقَّ وَلَوْ كَانَ مُرًّا. Tell the truth, despite it's too hard, it's too difficult. It means no one should hide in anything in the society. Everyone should have the right to express what he sees in the society, what he wants to say, without any censorship, self-censorship, or government censorship, etc. And also, the verses of Quran are very clear in this. Many verses. One of the verses of Quran says, "Don't hide the reality, and you have to express the reality. وَلَا تَلْبِسُوا الْحَقَّ." And also in the Caliphate time, when we go back to the time of Umar, the second Caliphate of Islam, one day he was talking on the mosque, and someone of the audiences, he stood and he asked, "Why your clothes is too long and our clothes are very short?" The Caliphate answered to the question of that individual, despite that he was very tough guy. He said, "Look, my share from booty, from which Muslims collected during the jihad from non-Muslims, it was just a little part of a textile or a mills, and then I asked my son to give me his share, and he gives me his share, and then I added that, and now my clothes looks quite longer." It was the response of the Caliphate of Islam to an ordinary person who asked him a question. It shows that the freedom of speech was allowed in the first time, in the initial time of Islam, even from the Caliphate. The issue of pluralism and also diversity is very important in Islamic Sharia. Islam is very clear on that. Islam says in Quran, and appreciate those people, they are listening to other people's speeches or points, or what they are saying, or what they're representing. And a good Muslim is someone who have to select the best speech or the best point for his practice. Quran says, فَبَشِّرِ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَمِعُونَ الْقَوْلَ فَيَتَّبِعُونَ أَحْسَنَهُ. Appreciating the people who are listening to diverse opinions and selecting one of the best points. It means in a free society based on Sharia, there should be diversity, there should be diverse opinions, there should be diverse ideas expressing among community, among people, And then a Muslim can select one which should be for his best will or for his best practice. It is allowed for a Muslim to listen to others and to select. The reality of Islam golden time also showed that there were certain diverse circles of studying at the same time. Second century of according to the solar years, and according to the our system, it's 7th century, 8th century, 9th century. 3 centuries where Muslim jurists like Abu Hanifa, like Shafi'i, like Dawud Zahiri, like Tibari, like Imam Muhammad, like other Islamic jurists, they were living together. They established their school of thoughts without harming each other, without destroying each other. Some of the students of one scholar at the same time studied from other scholar. It showed a great diversity at the same time among Islamic jurists. Even in Hanafi school, it comprised of the ideas of 4 very well-known jurists: Imam Muhammad ibn Hassan Shibani, Imam Abu Hanifa as the leader of this school of thought, Imam Zufar as another colleague of them, and Imam Abu Yusuf. Now when we are calling Hanafi school, even for their own point of view, you can take each of the point of view, each of the provisions adopted by one of these jurists. That is fine. You can call yourself as a Hanafi follower. Despite that diverse ideas exist already among the provisions adopted by these jurists. At the same time, if you look to Imam Shafi'i, if you look to Ahmad ibn Hanbal, if you look to Malik ibn Anas, let's talk on Malik ibn Anas. Malik ibn Anas adopted his school of thought, a school of Hadith, which based, as I mentioned, on Hadith in Quran in Medina. In the 8th century, when the time Khalifa Abu Mansur, he went for Hajj to Medina. He met Malik ibn Anas. Malik ibn Anas was in the very elderly age. He asked him, he discussed with him, if Malik ibn Anas wants, the Khalifa is ready to force all the Islamic nations to obey the school of Malik ibn Anas. It means the Hadith school. But Malik ibn Anas rejected Khalifa's point of view and said, look, every nation, every community in the current Islamic time, every community has its own somehow religious leader or its own jurist. Don't touch to these communities. Leave them on their own situation. Every nation can obey their own jurist or their own religious leader. Once again, when a few years back, Abu Mansur going back to Hajj, again met with Mansur and with Malik. And Malik ibn Anas was in very elderly age. Again, he asked Malik, if you want, I can force the all Islamic nation to obey your school of thought. But Malik ibn Anas rejected once again. It means even the Islamic jurists at that time, they recognized this kind of diversity and they wanted every nation to follow their own leaders. It shows a big diversity in Islamic society at that time. Let's come back to the Islamic, to the one of the very important issue in free society, which is trade and businesses. Fortunately, Islamic jurisprudence is very rich in this part. It's very rich in terms of definition, in terms of explanation of different types of deals in a society within the Islamic Sharia, within the Islamic community and with non-Muslim societies. This trade and businesses at the golden age of Islam was the main cause for extending Islam to other nations, to other parts of the world. The Islamic jurisprudence principles are very, very clear in this regard and has a very nice provisions, which I just selected a few provisions for better understanding of the Islamic jurisprudence position in regard of trade in businesses. These provisions already exist in Kitab al-Mujalla, in the book of al-Mujalla al-Adliya. Al-Mujalla al-Adliya, this is a book adopted during the Ottoman Empire by Sultan Abdul Hamid. It has 1,851 articles. In the first 99 articles are reflecting somehow the Islamic jurisprudence principles. In the book, I'm sure accessible, maybe it translated also in English for different languages. One of the main provisions of this 99 provisions, which developed by the time particularly by Hanafi school, at the beginning it adopted by Shafi'i school and later on developed by other Islamic jurists, particularly in Hanafi school. But we can find these principles in Maliki school, in Shafi'i school, in Hanbali school, in Hanafi school. One of the provisions says, for instance, Al-Ma'rufu Urfan Kal-Mashruti Shartan. Al-Ma'ruf, which become well-known in the society, like tradition. Al-Ma'ruf Urfan, the things become well-known in a society through the tradition. This is similar to something conditioned between people. It shows that the value in the stage of urf, of tradition, of customary law in the society, and respect the customary law, which many of the trade and business procedures at the beginning Hello? Hello now? Colleagues now, can you hear me? Okay, good. I was talking on provisions on Islamic jurisprudence that particularly focusing on trade in businesses, which has a very, very important rule in Islamic jurisprudence. I started by Al-Ma'ruf Urfan. In the second provision, which is important, it says, Al-Ma'rufu bayna al-tujari kal-mashruti baynahum. The things become well known among the business community. It is the same or similar to things conditioned between or among business or trader community. It shows again the highest respect to the tradition and to the customary law between business community. Another provision says, التعيين بالعرف كالتعيين بالنص. The things selected or chosen by urf, by tradition, these are the same thing somehow selected or chosen by nas. Nas means text of Holy Quran, text of Hadith, or other provisions adopted in Islamic books based on ijma and consensus and also logic. It means that the urf, the trading urf or the business urf or business tradition has a very highest stage in Islamic jurisprudence and recognized by Islamic jurists in the past. If still it has its validity. Another provision says, Al-Kitabu Kal-Khitabi. Al-Kitabu Kal-Khitab, it shows a kind of approach of business community using the current modern facilities like internet. It means that a businessman, as it was in the past the only way to talk face to face and to handle the deal with the opposite side, he or she as a businessman can do the same act through the modern facilities like internet, like sending a letter or communicating through other modern facilities. All these provisions which colleagues asking me on references are mentioned in the first part of Al-Kitab Al-Mujallat Al-Ahkam Al-Adliya, the book of Mujalla Al-Adliya. The Mujalla Al-Adliya, as I mentioned before, this book somehow adopted or established or created by a group of Islamic jurists, very well known. Among them was Zain al-Abidin Ibn Ibrahim, one of the very well-known Islamic scholars during the Ottoman Empire, in the last time of Ottoman Empire. And the book becomes so well-known among Islamic societies. Still, most of the Islamic societies, including Afghanistan, using this book as a main source for the civil code. In our civil code in Afghanistan, maybe in other societies also, somehow took main parts of this Mujalla to the civil code of as a national legislation in this society. These provisions shows the highest value of the tradition in the customary law in terms of trade and businesses. Also, there are a number of other provisions. Just I mentioned a few of them for your better understanding. As a reference, you can reach to any library and get this book, Mujallatul Adliya, Mujallatul Ahkam Al-Adliya, and the first 99 articles are mainly focusing on these provisions. Also, there is another provision I have to mention this. This is regarding that no one should violate, no one should abuse the property, even the Sultan, even the Amir, even the President, even a dictator. No one has right in Islamic society to violate the property of someone. It says, Al-amru bit-tasarrufi fi milk al-ghayri batilun. If someone orders someone to collect the property of someone else, this is totally abolished in Islamic Sharia. This order is not, it doesn't have any validity in Islamic Sharia. No one should order someone to do any approach or to get others' properties according to Islamic Sharia. This is very clear. لا يجوز لأحد أن يأخذ مال أحد بلا سبب. It's not allowed to anyone to take the property of anyone without any legitimate reason. لا يجوز لأحد أن يتصرف في ملك الغير. It's not allowed to anyone to do any legal act in others' property, even he is a sultan or amir, etc. And also, this book of Mujalla focuses on different types of deals, different types of contracts, which are very supportive for the growth of Islamic economy or the economy of a free society, which most of these kind of contracts also mentioned in the book of Free Society in Islam. We have the type of contract of muzaribat, which someone has the money and he gives the money to someone else to work on that money, to do some business on that money. In both the owner of the money, the investor, and the person who has to use that investment for some activity, some business or trade activity, they have the shared responsibility for benefit, and also if they couldn't take any benefit, they have to share the benefit, and in the non-benefit situation also they have to share they have to be the same position. And also the deal of shirkat. Shirkat means the company, different kinds of companies already identified in Islamic textbooks, different kinds of deals in contracts. In one of the very well-known is the contract is the salam. Salam means someone has the need, for instance, a farmer need for the seed. He goes to the owner of the land and asks the landlord to give him some seed, and then when the season of the harvest reach, he can give them, for instance, instead of the seed, some level of the wheat or something agreed between them. It's possible. It's not prohibited in Islam. And also the waqf issue, it's very clear in Islam. This is a kind of showing solidarity with the society, which has a long chapter in Islamic provisions. However, that's good. One of the colleagues mentioned that he has the Al-Mujalla book, which is good. And he promised to send to other colleagues. Thank you so much. At the end of my points, I would like to mention some main challenges, challenges for the the free society and Islamic societies in the contemporary Islamic world. One is very important. The first one is a kind of dogmatism or a kind of closed mind of Muslim community or Muslim individuals, unfortunately, due to the extending of radicalism in most part of Islamic societies, which affected most part of our Islamic societies, starting from Libya to Syria to Iraq to Afghanistan to Iran to Pakistan to everywhere. In the second challenge, as it already identified in many speeches by many scholars, that is the closure of the ijtihad, the closure of possibility of Islamic jurists to somehow to extract the new rules, the new provisions from the Islamic references, the Islamic resources like Quran and Hadith. This closure of gate of ijtihad happened in 13th century when the Mongols attacked the Islamic center, Baghdad, and the Islamic jurists came together and did a consensus that no one should do ijtihad because the situation is totally changed and there is no people to talk based on justice. And for that purpose, they closed this gate. And still, many of the madrasas in schools in Islamic circles, particularly in this region, in South Asia region, like the Deobandi madrasa, believe on this decision in the 13th century, and they are not allowing any jurist to extract the new provisions or the modern rules from the Islamic resources. In this case, as Karim Soroush, one of the great scholars, which I like him too much, this guy says that we need for the brave Islamic jurists who should break down this condition and should go out and raise their points based on the conditions we already have for ijtihad. Being an ijtihad, a mujtahid, a person who should collect or should extract these provisions from Islamic sources, has its own condition. It's very clearly mentioned in the books of the Islamic jurisprudence foundation, Usulul Fiqh. A jurist who has the sufficient and highest capacity on Arabic language, because the sources are mainly in Arabic language. This is one of the conditions. The jurist who should has full knowledge on Quran. Not all Quran. It's very clear. There are only 500 or 520 or 27 verses in Quran belong to the practical orders in Islamic jurisprudence. A jurist should have knowledge, full knowledge on the reason of these verses, the reason why it came to Prophet Muhammad, and with including those very sensitive issues in terms of Arabic grammar already exist in Quran and Sunnah. And also a jurist who should have the capacity or the knowledge to understand is the Hadith. Indeed, Hadith have a lot of books. There are 6 main books in Sunni school. They are calling Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Bayhaqi, Tirmizi, Ibn Majah, Abi Dawud. These are the 6 main books. These 6 books were not exist when Abu Hanifa was alive. This 6th book established later. One of the challenge for Hadith is that Hadith collected 100 years later after the death or after the departure, holy departure of Prophet of Islam, because collecting of Hadith was not allowed during the Prophet time, during the first Caliphate time. It gathered only 100 letters after the death of Prophet of Islam, peace be upon him. And indeed, when you collect the points or the speeches of Prophet 100 later years, it is difficult to collect the real Hadith. And that is why most of the jurists, they were very cautious to identify the right Hadith. Abu Hanifa, founder of the school of Ahlul Rai, reason, he was one of those jurists. He hadn't a strong belief on the correctness of Hadith, because at that time this Hadith book was not collected, and also he had doubt on that. Then he tried to compare his vision based on the logic, based on the reason, etc. This is another challenge. In these conditions, having knowledge of 527 verses of Quran, having knowledge of Hadith, not all Hadith because there are 6 books, 3,000. Around 3,000 Hadiths of Prophet of Islam, peace be upon him, are relevant to the practical provisions of Islamic jurisprudence. And justice, having good reputation in the society, not committed sins in Islam, that are the conditions. Whoever as a jurist has this condition, he can start doing ijtihad. But we need brave jurists who should start this way once again in Islamic societies. The third point, which is very important for us, as I mentioned in the book also in the past, that is the supremacy of Hadith school to Raya, to school of Raya. Abu Hanifa based his knowledge, his jurisprudence on Raya. But right now, most of the Islamic circles, they are conditioning somehow studying of Hadith as the main condition for being Islamic jurist, Islamic mufti. Particularly the Deobandi madrasa, which affecting our region in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, this is the main condition. Whoever is studying in a Deobandi madrasa, in the highest stage, he has to complete all these 6 books of Hadith I mentioned before. He has to complete, he has to study all these 6 books. Then, it affects to society when these mullahs, these scholars, graduating in coming to society, in playing a role as a judge, as an imam in the mosque, mainly they are focusing on Hadith. They are not going back to their own vision to extract provisions from sources. They are going to Hadith, even to the very weak Hadith. Hadith has different types: strong Hadith, weak Hadith, well-known Hadith. It has a very important knowledge which called by the name of Mustalihul Hadith, the knowledge which is introducing or familiarizing a person with Hadith, since it collected 100 letters after the death of Prophet Muhammad. In my opinion, there are some issues that need for to relook by scholars, by civil society activists, by academics. First of all, are we in the same situation the Islamic societies were 1,400 years back? In that time, we see there was a line, a red line between Muslim community and non-Muslim community, which we are calling that Darul Kufr in Darul Islam, the city of infidels, the city of non-Muslims, in the city of Muslims. In that time, the rule was that if a non-Muslim wanted to enter to Muslim society, he had to get aman, the safety permission or the safety permit, which we call in Arabic aman, and we call that person musta'man, a person who got insurance, safety insurance to enter to Islamic society. In the same, the Muslim, when they enter to the non-Muslim area, they had to negotiate their entrance on advance with the authority of that side. Temporary was these actions, temporary was these permissions, not permanently. But right now, in practice, this line totally destroyed. There are Muslims in different parts of the world living together with non-Muslims, with Christians, with Jews, with Hindus, with Buddhists, with diverse type. This line totally destroyed, but still the followers of Hadith, the followers of School of Hadith, the extremist groups, the radicalists, the conservatives, still they are thinking that this line still exists. This line does not exist. Invitation to Islam, working in coexistence with non-Muslim communities, this is essential part of the life nowadays. We have to look on this issue once again. Unfortunately, some people still believe on it, particularly movements like Taliban, like ISIL, like others, feeling to restore or looking to restore this line once again, which is totally impossible. The second point, which have to look on it, that's the expanding technology and changing the world as a very small village. and exchange of trades and businesses among communities in a minute. It's a very easy way to order something from a company and collect that easily a few minutes later or a few hours later. This change of our world, it also needs to relooking for Islamic provisions, how we can develop these provisions for better coexistence and better development of trade and businesses with others within Muslim society and with non-Muslim societies. Culture aspects is another issue. Culture is somehow plays a very significant role. Exchange of culture, exchange opportunities between Muslim and non-Muslim, as Muslim communities immigrated in the very highest level to non-Muslim societies, then the respect to cultures and diversity of cultures should be somehow promoted in Islamic societies, and this is not prohibited in Islamic Sharia totally. Exchange of culture, it's recognized in Islamic Sharia. In the 10th year of the last year somehow of Prophet, when he was alive in Medina, a group of Christian leaders, Christian community of Najran of Saudi Arabia at that time, came to Prophet Muhammad, brought with them somehow very valuable gifts to Prophet. Prophet allowed them to stay inside the Medina mosque to pray in their own method inside the mosque, and Prophet accepted their gift, and Prophet appreciated them and sent them back. This is a kind of cultural exchange and respecting to other cultures, since culture covers all aspects: religion, arts, legal system, etc. The fourth point is immigration. The wide immigration right now happen in Islamic world, from Islamic societies, from Islamic countries to non-Muslim countries. That is another aspect that we need. We need to look once again how we can make our societies in Islamic countries better place for people to stay and to pursue their life. Need for education. We need for other communities, for other societies to come to us, to teach our children, to teach in our societies, to teach in our universities in Islamic societies. We need for technology. We are very backward in technology in Islamic societies. We don't have any achievement in the recent 100 last years. We need to the Western societies, to non-Muslim societies, to cooperate with Islamic society. There is no prohibition in Islam to gain or to ask for technology from others. Prophet, peace be upon him, says you have to learn knowledge, you have to get knowledge if the knowledge is seen. Seen was a difficult place at that time, you know. Economic development, that's another issue. We need to restore our values. We need to relook to the main resources of Islamic Sharia. We need to restore a new movement in Islamic societies for a better future for the future generations. Thank you so much for your attention. It was the main points just I wanted to share with you, colleagues. If there is any point of view, I welcome, and I will try to discuss further if needed. Thank you so much for your attention, for your time. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ramizpoor, for this excellent presentation of the history of how the Sharia had evolved, and how you have shown it is perfectly compatible with the institutions of free society. And in your detailed overview, I think you not only have covered the main the controversies, the main factors which have led to the stagnancy in the Muslim thought in modern times, but in the end you have also alluded to several action points, I would say, what needs to be done. And in that case, you definitely have, I would say, preempted several questions which participants definitely would like to ask. But we have time. We have a good half an hour for question and answers to Mr. Ramizpoor. As usual, participants can kindly type in the questions in the chat box. And if they want to speak directly, they can press the right button, and I would be happy to bring them on audio mode. You'll have to just synchronize your speakers at the right time. All right, so I'm looking forward to comments and questions from the participants now. Ramizpoor, now you can speak. I will be turning off my microphone. There is one question there. There are more participants who are typing their questions. You can take them take the questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ali, and also thank you so much, Faryal, for your question. The question is that the first is, what is the relation between the state? How is possible to have diverse opinion in the implementation when the state's law is supreme? Okay, I think before this question, we had another question. Do you think there would be jurists in 21st century who would be capable of doing jihad? Yes. The condition of being a mujtahid or doing ijtihad, as I mentioned in my points, are very clear. Full knowledge of Arabic on all aspects, on very sensitive points of Arabic grammar, since Quran is Hadith of Prophet, peace be upon him, is in Arabic. In other textbook and sources, mainly are in Arabic. And the second was knowledge on that 527 or 530 verses of Quran. We call the specific term is Sha'n al-Nuzul, the reason that why that specific verse came to Prophet, peace be upon him. Why? A jurist should know that. Knowledge of 3,000 hadiths based on who reported that hadith, how was the situation, the personal character of the people who reported that hadith, because as I mentioned, it collected 100 years later of the holy departure of Prophet. And also a person who should have justice, good reputation in the society, or in the highest stage, in having virtue. Virtue also is important for a person who express himself as an Islamic jurist and capable for ijtihad. In the communication system, in access to information, which was difficult in the beginning, in 7th century, in 8th century, in 9th century for Islamic jurists, now is very easy. Access for internet, access to discuss with other Islamic jurists in Islamic world, access to libraries, online libraries. everything is very easy right now in our world. As I mentioned, the current world, the temporary world, is like a village. But it needs brave jurists who should break down the current deadlock and come out in the scene and raise his voice in knowledge to others. Fortunately, we have seen some of this kind Islamic jurists. For instance, Sheikh Qarzawi or Muhammad Abu Zuhra or some others maybe existed in Islamic world and or still alive, some of them, and they produced very good books, very good fatwas, very good provisions in Islamic jurisprudence, and they enriched the Islamic jurisprudence. For instance, in the past, if you ask it a mullah, a conservative mullah, is it allowed for a woman to appear in TV screen and report the news or as a newscaster? Mullahs were saying, no, it's not allowed for women. But if you see to the contemporary fatwas of mullah, they said, yes, women allowed to talk, to work with men together with respect to some values which is important for Islamic societies. It is possible, but it needs some brave jurists. The second question I have to relook because I don't have my glass with me right now. I have a few questions you can clarify. The first is, what is the relationship between the jurist and the state? Yeah, this is important. The relation between jurist and state, this is important. If you look to the history of Islam, sometimes the relation between Islamic jurists and the state runner like Khalifa or like Amir was not good. For instance, Abu Hanifa, the founder of Hanafi school, he had got a problem with the time Khalifa. But having good relation of jurists with Khalifa, with the political system, also played a very significant role for expanding the specific school of thought of those people they had relation. Abu Yusuf, a student of Abu Hanifa, who took the position of supreme judge in the time of the Caliphate, he played a very significant role for expanding the Hanafi school from the practical aspect through the judiciary system existed at that time. Even it affected up to date. Some of the jurists who couldn't establish good relation with the system or couldn't get followers, like Dawood al-Tibari, like Awza'i, like some others, they couldn't exist at the moment in Islamic societies. Only we can find their theories, their ideas through the books. The Sunni schools at the beginning, it was around 10 school of thoughts. Only 4 school of thought, Hanafi, Shafi, Hanbali, Maliki, got opportunity to expand time by time and to find their own followers in Islamic societies. Sometimes, unfortunately, as we see, the jurists they don't have good relation with the system, with the political system. Sometimes they are very conservative. Sometimes they are obeying the state runner. We have seen in Islamic societies, which also it could be affected to the provision, to the legal provisions, to fatwas, etc. For instance, up to recent time, no one from religious community in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, were not able to say anything against suicide attacks. Just since a few months, there were some gathering of Islamic scholars in Pakistan, in Indonesia, and later on in Kabul. Islamic scholars or mullahs came together and they announced a fatwa against suicide attacks based on Islamic Sharia, which welcomed by Islamic society, but still Taliban and other radical groups didn't agree with this fatwa, and they are continuing their fighting against civilian and against people. Let me have a look on the second part. How is it possible to have diverse opinions and implementation when the state law is supreme? Yeah, the state law is important. The state law is significant. The constitutionalism which we have seen in the past years in Islamic societies, play a very significant role. Each of the Islamic countries is adopted its own constitution, and fortunately, most of the constitutions somehow reflect the individual's rights and some perception from Islamic jurisprudence in each of these Islamic countries. I had a research on many of these Islamic countries' constitutions, and I presented that, if colleagues remember, in 2011 in one of the gatherings in Istanbul, network in Istanbul. And I demonstrated and I proved that all these Islamic constitutions somehow collected the main ideas as the reference or as a resource from Islamic jurisprudence. The Afghan constitution is a good example. The Afghan constitution somehow recognizes Islamic Sharia as the main source of national legislation in its Article 3. And it says there should not be any other provision, any law in Afghanistan in opposite to the Islamic Sharia. It is very clear. It is important for a society, for a country to have its constitution. In the constitution, since it forms the relation between individual and between the state, if there is provisions copied or somehow extracted from Islamic jurisprudence supporting individuals' rights, human rights, individuality of punishment in crimes, all these provisions, that would be good, that would be great. It is very supportive because we are living in a modern time, in a very modern situation, and there is need for constitution. But again, this constitution should recognize and reflect the real values, Islamic values, which should be very supportive for the individual rights, like the Afghan constitution. Afghan constitution is accessible through internet. If our colleagues want, they should go to Google and look to Afghan constitution, particularly Article 22, Article 59. Most of these articles somehow reflecting the individual's rights in other provisions and copied from civil code, Islamic civil code, Mujallatul Adliya, and also from jurisprudence provisions, which I touched on that before. Let me look to another question. Okay. Region says something about the freedom of Muslims to leave the region. Yeah, there is a very controversial question asked by Muhammad Amin regarding the leaving of religion. Leaving of religion is somehow, as we have in other societies, rule of law. The Sharia provisions should be counted as the rule of law provisions in Islamic societies, as it is not allowed in any society to cross the rule of law, the articles of the law, the provisions of a law, national legislation, etc. This is the same. Sharia, as I mentioned at the beginning, it covers all aspects of life of individuals. Leaving of religion, leaving of Islam, it is totally prohibited in Islamic Sharia. In this aspect, we have to consider two aspects. One is judiciary system. Judiciary system in Islam looking to the appearance or the things appearing from an individual, like any act against Islam, insulting Islam, acting against Islamic values, etc. In one is the things belong to the theological part of an individual, to the belief she or he has. In this part, if a person individually or personally doesn't believe, or he or she wanted to go out from Islam secretly without sharing his views front of judiciary or front of community, which is very dangerous, causing for very risk for she or he, it depends to he or she or his or her opinion or individual situation. According to the theological aspect of Sunni school of thought, particularly in Hanafi school, if someone crossing the red lines of Sharia in committing any sin, any wrongdoing in the society, it depends to God at the end of the time. In another word, if he totally or she totally rejects Islam in saying I'm not a Muslim anymore, it means he or she going out from the circle of Islam. This is prohibited. This is not acceptable according to Islamic Sharia. And Islamic Sharia has a focus subject on it by the name of political aspects of Sharia, or as-siyasatul Shariah. And the reason is that this kind of action going out of Islam in an Islamic society, destroying the order, the common order of the society. One day a person going out, another day another person going out, and it will cause for destroying the order of the society. If we look to Quran says no one should be forced to enter to Islam. And also Quran says in one of the very important surahs of Quran, calling to non-Muslims, you should obey your own religion, and I am obeying my own religion. أنا أعبد أنا لا أعبد ما تعبدون ولا أنتم عابدون ما أعبدتم. I am not praying your religion, and you are not praying my religion. Somehow like this. It means a total freedom of obeying or following any religion a person has in an Islamic society, without harming other religion, without disturbing others. But it is very controversial topic. If a Muslim in an Islamic society changing his religion or her religion, according to Islamic point of view, he or she should be punished. For women, there is no execution, but for men, there is an opportunity for 3 days, according to some opinion of Islamic jurists, allowing a person to come back to Islam. This is very controversial, and this is not a common thing. This is not happening every day. It is very seldom that sometimes some person changing the opinion. Let's back and think ideal Islamic society, how we can promote free society values in an Islamic society, which is very important from our opinion. Going out from Islam is not so important thing and so common thing in an Islamic society. There is another question by a person by Waqat Ahmad, is asking what is your understanding of the Quranic verses. Al-Iqra fi Rocky translation, as there is no compensation in religion like Rafidin. Yeah, there is no compensation. There is no forcing measure to someone to force someone to enter to Islam, because Islam recognizes a reason in human mind. Everybody should think that the word of reason in mind mentioned in Quran 48 times, equally to the word of nur, of light. It means somehow, according to some scholars, that nur in light, as it's enlightening the human way, the reason also enlightening human way. I'm not going to mobilize people for entering to Islam. Just I wanted to say that there is the highest stage of reason in human mind in Islam, and no one should be forced to accept Islam. There is some other question. Let me check. Okay. You cannot Islam upon people. Yes, it's really nice to get your understanding of verses, especially the language. Trying too much. Let me find Linda. Thank you so much for this interpretation. It seems sad and dangerous to that so many in us do not understand, even this compatibility between Sharia. Yeah, thank you so much, Ms. Linda. Thank you so much for your great support and close engagement with Istanbul Network for Free Society. I appreciate your words you mentioned regarding existence of this kind of compatible points in Islamic Sharia. I think it's important. Unfortunately, the low knowledge of people or lack of their access to some references may be cause for a kind of misunderstanding in Western societies about Islamic values that promote free society values. But still, it need more active engagement to enhance this knowledge, to enhance or to create more resources in this regard. Our book, which published through your support of the Foundation of Free Society in Islam, that plays a very significant role in our society in Afghanistan, particularly for the young generation. I'm very thankful and grateful for great scholars who took part by sharing their articles in this book. And we translated that book in Dari version, and we are going to translate that in Pashto too, which playing a very good and positive role in our society. Thank you so much. Still, I'm looking if I missed some question.
Right.
Still colleagues have time.
There is, we have maybe about 7-8 minutes. Fidaur Rahman, you want to ask a question by speaking, please, if you can.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Hello? Mr. Ramizpoor, can you hear me?
Hello, yes. I'm now doing mute my mic and you can talk.
Thank you so much, sir, for your excellent presentation. I just want to share my knowledge regarding the issue of conversion of religion from Islam. Let me share that there is another point of view that exists in the subcontinent, and it was presented by Imam Hamiduddin Farahi and his pupils like Imam Amin Hassan Islahi and Javed Ahmad Ghamdi. They have totally different opinion regarding conversion of religion from the classical jurists. We need to study and understand their point of view, and it has potential to be presented in the contemporary world, and it has a lot of potential to convince those who think that Islam does not allow others and even Muslims to convert to any other religion in case they have some very serious questions and they don't find satisfactory answers after those questions. So I think we need to promote that opinion of Farahi school of thought, and if you like, I can share the detailed opinion of that school of thought via email and even in this group. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fidaur Rahman. I appreciate your points. Please share any link, any materials you have already. Thank you.
I will share, inshallah, very soon.
Thanks.
I don't see any more questions. Right. We are moving. Okay, someone, maybe Ramizpoor, can you turn off this? Okay, there is one quick question, last quick question from. Right. All right, please go ahead, Ramizpoor. Can you respond? Then we
Yes, Mr. Vikat mentioned that I couldn't answer to the second part of his question. Still, I'm looking what was the second part of his.
he just explained this again. This is a clarification. Is deen limited to religion or way of life? The word deen.
Yes. The word of deen. The word of deen, actually, it has a specific definition in Islamic Sharia. It says it's very broad concept. We have deen, we have Sharia, we have fiqh, we have some other. دين وضع إلهي صائق لذوي العقول محمود باختيارهم إلى الخير بالذات. This is a very common definition of deen. It says deen is something adopted by God, and this is for the benefit of people who are obeying the deen or religion, for their benefit, for their wellness. This is a very broad definition of deen. In this case, exactly, the deen or religion, it came to the benefit of human society, to improve the life of human, and to take him away from bad things, and to develop the style of life, the environment, the human life, etc. In this case, unfortunately, the Islamic jurists in the past, they only focused on the provisional or the provisions, jurisprudence provisions of Islamic deen. This is one of the aspects always ties or always directing to Islamic jurists. They only focus on one of the aspects. They didn't focus too much on the natural aspect of deen and other aspects of deen, which is God wanted or wants human community to focus on that, to develop the life, to live in this world like they never die, to work in this life, this world that they never die. And they also look future to the another world as they are dying even right now. Deen is very broader concept. It covers many aspects of the life of human community.
All right. Thank you so much, Ramizpoor. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining this very engaging webinar. I'm sure that, like me, all of you have enjoyed the presentation by Ramizpoor and his question answers. We will be, as usual, preparing a detailed report on the basis of this conversation we had, and then we will later also make available the recording of the webinar as well as the proceedings, the discussion on the website, IslamicLibertyNetwork.org. We are grateful again to Ramizpoor. Just a small additional point. Our participant Fidaur Rahman mentioned about Farahi School of Thought, and interestingly, this is now being in Pakistan and others parts of the world represented by a scholar called Javed Ramidi. And when he issued a fatwa against the private jihad, and he was facing the death threats from Taliban, and he had to leave Pakistan, and now he's based in Malaysia. And we are at the network. We are in touch with him, and we are trying to benefit from also his school of thought and viewpoints, and so that the others, stakeholders and others, school of thoughts can also learn these developments, which the richness of which has been thoroughly presented by Ramizpoor today. And at this point, I close this webinar. Hope to see all of you in the next webinar, which we'll be announcing here, inshallah, very soon. Please take care and have a good evening or good morning, good afternoon, depending on your time zone. Goodbye for now.